Hey up folks, and welcome back to my channel. Now as you can see, got a new bike. The bike I had before this, in addition to the other two bikes you can see behind me, was Kawasaki Z1000 Tourer, which I bought brand new back in May. Fantastic bike, loved it on the 1 hour test ride. But what I found, unfortunately, was that when it came to travelling any distance and 2 or 3 hours in the saddle, it became really uncomfortable for me. That's not so much a criticism of the bike, and perhaps more a reflection upon the fact that I'm 6'1" tall, and it's quite a compact riding position on that sports touring motorcycle. I'm more used to something which is physically bigger, has a bit more road presence, and a more upright riding position. So I was looking for something a little bit more along the lines of the old BMW GS Adventure that you can see behind me here, for longer distance touring. And did all the research as you do, looking at KTMs and BMWs and Yamahas and all the rest of it, and I came to the conclusion that the majority of my boxes were ticked by this bike. And this is the Honda VFR1200X Crosstourer, as it's called in this country and in Europe, the Crosstourer. And this doesn't have any real off-road pretenses, albeit that it is, as you can see, of the adventure style. But a great touring machine, legendary Honda build quality, legendary Honda reliability. And as somebody said on one of the reviews, that they felt absolutely confident wherever they were in the world on this motorcycle, that when they got on and turned the key and pressed the button, that the bike would fire up every time and not let them down. And that's very, very important to me. So here she is, again only 6 months old, 1,200 miles on the clock. Not ridden her yet, the weather's absolutely appalling. But what I tend to do is I tend to buy my newer bike around about this time of year, around about the winter time, and then spend sort of January, February, March, the dark and wet months if you will, accessorising the bike and customising it to exactly how I want it. So I'm just going to show you around the bike, show you what I've added already, and then I'm just going to take you through the fitting of some crash bobbins, which are a little bit different, which I'm going to put in here, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that aesthetically they will actually add to the overall looks of the bike. So let's have a look around her. So here we are then, the Honda VFR1200X Crosstourer, and this one is a 2019 model in candy red, I think you'd call that. And I'll just take you through what I've actually added to the bike. This is the Highlander spec model, so this is the top of the range Crosstourer, and as you can see, the bike in that spec comes with the crash bars. It also has heated grips as standard, built in, and the adjustable screen there. This must be one of the most easily adjustable screens other than an electric screen on the market. Very easy to adjust with one hand on the move. Excellent, straightforward design. Okay, what I've added since I got the bike, and she came with all the luggage, everything's in absolutely pristine, as new condition. The dealership actually said that the gent that bought the bike 6 months ago brought it back simply because his wife apparently didn't like riding on the back. So that's sounds like a plausible reason to me. So hence the reason for the bike being up for sale just 6 months into its life. So what about the bike then? The engine is the legendary VFR engine. It's got variable valve timing technology. V4 inline. I used to have an old Pan-European ST 1100, which was a fantastic bike, never let me down. Piled up the miles on that one quite a few years ago. That too had the V4 engine, but that was mounted the other way. It wasn't in line, it was laterally mounted. So I'm not entirely unfamiliar with the V4 engine. It's got a lovely feel to it, lovely and smooth, but with bags of character as well and plenty of power. So it's the best part of 130 brake horsepower, this bike, but absolutely bucket loads of mid-range torque. No problem in sixth gear, in top gear, to pull away with just a twist of the throttle. Great bike. So what have I added to this bike then? Well, in the short time that I've had her, I've put on the R&G stainless steel radiator guard, and the last thing really that you want when you're out riding is for a stone to be thrown up or some other debris and puncturing the radiator. That's a very, very expensive fix. So for the sake of £75, I've fitted, it was fairly straightforward to fit this R&G radiator guard. It's simply a matter of undoing these bolts here so that this plastic shroud can be pulled back, and then there are just a couple of clips and nuts and bolts. It's very, very straightforward indeed. So that's the radiator guard. I've also fitted these Cree 60 watt LED lights. Now, the Honda lights for this bike are phenomenally expensive. According to the research that I did online, the Honda lights, apart from being the best part of £300 or £400 to buy, require a separate purchasing of a switch mechanism and of a wiring loom, I understand, and a mounting kit, and best part of £1,000 when you're done, including fitting. Well, these were 35 quid. I've yet to wire them in, but I've fitted very, very similar LED lights to these before. I've got something very, very similar on the GS back there, and they work an absolute treat. Very, very bright indeed, and an excellent addition for not very much money there. Quite straightforward to fit. I've just behind where the bracket is mounted there, on either side, I've just placed a piece of self-adhesive rubber to the fairing, just to make sure that there isn't the possibility of any contact between the bracket and the paintwork through vibration, say at high speed. So those are the LED spotlights that I fitted, and yeah, 35 quid, not what, 700-800 for the Honda ones. Bit of a no-brainer really for me. The only other thing at this, I mean, this bike does actually come with a 12 volt power socket fitted. That power socket is not permanently live, it comes live with the ignition, so you can't really use it for battery charging purposes. But I'm just going to bang an adapter in there so that I can actually get a couple more sockets to power phone and sat-nav and what have you, and maybe even the spotlights as well. I might go down that route for wiring those in. That's just a RAM mount for the sat-nav stroke phone, which goes in that Ultimate add-ons case there, which is a brilliant bit of kit. The bike also came with this, which is a fixing ring for a tank bag. So I just need to find out what particular make and model of tank bag that fits. And other than that, just a very solid, reliable, comfortable bike. Now, what I'm going to fit today to here, where the crash bars are bolted to the bike, is a couple of crash bobbins, one either side, obviously. They're not run-of-the-mill. I'll show you them in a minute. The reason for that is if you do drop the bike, although the bars will take the impact, the bars are every bit as important cosmetically to the bike as they are functionally, and you probably wouldn't want to mark them up. So I've got some bobbins, but I didn't go down the usual nylon and plastic route. So what I've actually bought, and I'll show you, are these. And they are machine turned from looks like brass or bronze, and I've polished them up just using a 2000 grit wet and dry and some of that Maguire's all metal polish there, which is excellent stuff, and they've come up a treat, like a couple of jewels really, and I'm just going to fit them now, and fortunately I've located a few bits and bats, nuts and bolts and spacers that work a treat from both a functional and a cosmetic point of view, so we'll crack on with fitting those now. Okay, so the first job's to remove this retaining bolt here. That will need replacing with a longer bolt to accommodate the crash bobbin. But this is a 13mm bolt with the standard socket type head. Oops, there we go. Okay, so that's what comes out. Now, as you can see from these very heavy machine turned metal bobbins, that the shaft on the bobbin, because of its length, requires a longer bolt to be fitted. So the lesson to be learned here is actually never to throw anything away. I started off by because it's an M8 thread, trying to scrap around in my bits and bats looking for something a bit longer than the original bolt. Came up with this one, put that in there, and that's how much additional thread you get, and that's not enough to get that to lock into there. So then the next bolt that I had, which was longer, was this one, which is again an M8, but this is too long. If you place it in there, that's way too much thread, and it will only go so far into the side of the mounting there. So rooted around again and found a packet of these M8 nylon spacers, which I bought some time ago. I can't even remember what for. And the only other issue is, whereas this bolt here is a pan head, this one is a countersink head with an Allen socket in it. So had to think about that, rooted round again and found some countersink washers, and as luck would have it, these are red. And I actually bought it as a part of the approach to some work on this Yamaha XJR here. So that's not a bad match really, and entirely fortuitously, obviously that fits in there perfectly as a countersunk head on the bolt into that countersink washer. That goes on top of the spacer, which reduces the length of the shaft of the bolt. That gives me exactly the right amount of remaining threaded shaft there to go into the engine bars, and the actual aesthetic result on the outside, I think you'll agree, is as good as it's going to get, and that's purely fortuitously. Definitely more by accident than design. So these are going to mount into here, and as well as having a very, very functional use for the bike, cosmetically and aesthetically, they're matching fine. In fact, these engine cases here have a sort of goldy bronze finish, and of course these crash bobbins here have a similar finish. Not an exact match, but hey, as a speculative endeavour, that's as good as it gets, I think. So let's crack on and bolt these in. Okay, so Allen key, sure it's the right size, yeah. And there we are, one crash bobbin. Other side, obviously exactly the same procedure, but that's pretty good. Really pleased with that. Dead straightforward. These I bought off of eBay. They're only a tenner. I think it's a chap who turns various things from metal, obviously on an engineer's lathe, and these were actually advertised as crash bobbins for I think a Suzuki GSX 750 or something like that. Certainly not this bike, but when I sort of looked at the measurements on eBay and sort of compared it with the measurements of this crash bar here where the bolt goes, it occurred to me that they should fit, and for the sake of a tenner, it's worth having a punt really. If they haven't fitted, there's no great drama, you know. Keep them for another application, but this is unusually come up trumps first time round, so just a short video really there to introduce the bike, show you what I've done to it thus far, and a bit of an idea around fitting these solid metal engineered crash bobbins on the side there. Okay, brilliant, thanks, catch you later.